Welcome everyone to TKK, the Kindness Not podcast. I'm your host, Derek Cortez. Your co-host is
Gabriela Hernandez.
And today's guest is Kelley Coelho. She's going to be sharing her story. The TKK Kindness Not is a anti-hate, anti-bullying, all-inclusive community, and we just want to get our guest's story out there. So how are you doing today, Kelley?
Good, thank you.
What about you, Gabby?
Pretty good.
We're super excited about the story that you have to share with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, so my name is Kelley Coelho. I am the owner of BNC Investigations. I just wrapped up retirement with the United States Army. I'm a full 100% disabled veteran, and I'm a mother of two beautiful daughters. I love them so much. And yeah, that's a little bit about myself.
Perfect. Where did you grow up?
Turlock?
Turlock. Okay. Oh, like born and raised in Turlock? Or?
Yeah, I was actually born and raised in Turlock.
How do you like that?
Love it. I love Turlock. It's my hometown.
Turlock is so beautiful. I want to move there too.
I know. Me too. Take me with you.
Right?
Take me with
you guys can move to Turlock and then I'll come to Patterson as
Okay,
well.
we'll switch places.
Yeah, right.
Switch houses maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, we're just
You can have my dirty house.
Just kidding. We'll clean it beforehand, right? Get it over.
Well, no, we'll just hire a house cleaner.
Oh,
Yeah,
I have
okay.
connections.
There you go.
Yeah.
She knows everyone. Okay, so we're gonna just get to know you a little bit. Can you tell us what inspires you?
What inspires me? So basically just, seeing that everybody is human and, everybody has a heart and everybody, goes through their own phases in life. And it really inspires me to want to bring the peace back together, like world peace. And I think by going through like all the trials and tribulations that I've personally endured, right? I think that I feel like my story is like starting to make sense, like puzzle pieces. And so now it's like everything's coming like in front of me and I'm like, whoa, like, okay, this is what life's about. And it's not about I'm better than this person or you're better than anybody else, because everybody has their own story to tell. And I think at the end of the day, we're all human. We all make mistakes, but it's just bringing that human dignity, respect, and peace and love back to each other and just spreading the goodness of, and finding the good when there's bad.
You sound like you're a very empathetic person. Do you feel other people's emotions a lot? Like when they're talking, you're like, I know where you're coming from.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of how I feel too. So it's like, I'm always like, whenever I'm talking with Gabby, I'm always like giving the other person's perspective on like an issue. And it's like, it almost seems like as if I'm against the person talking to me, but really I just see perspectives from both sides of the story. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that's something that you have going on too.
Yeah, a little bit. Maybe not as much, but it's more of that I try to understand their story and how I could support them better. Or, like say for instance, I'm a single mom. So when I hear other single moms, of course that's gonna tug at my heartstrings, right? Or if it's a military issue or if it's a veteran issue, okay, that tugs a little bit at my heartstrings. Oftentimes like investigators, like private investigators, it's really frowned upon like for us to kind of get emotional or show emotion, right? But I'm human. I have to show that because it also creates the bond and respect even for your clients, right? Like when you show that you actually care and not a lot of other people are, it's like sets you apart. And so I really feel that, connecting with them on a different level just creates a lasting memory that they're going to come back to you or, want to do business with you again.
Definitely. And actually, that's a good transition point. So you own a company. You mentioned that you own a company called BNC Investigations. What is that and what is it that your team does?
Yeah, so we're a private investigation company. We do anything from background checks to asset examinations. We do surveillance, whether it's from family law to criminal. We work all different types of cases. So any attorney, civilian, anybody that wants to hire us can contact us to get support in any way that, that they want. I started out in, doing this line of work. I was trying to find my real dad. And with that story, my friend is actually a private investigator in San Diego, and she was able to help me find my real dad in such a short amount of time. And that story was very impactful for me because that was like a pivot point of me like starting to get really interested in investigations and saying like, you helped me find closure that quick. Like, I want to be able to do this for other people. Like, it was just It was so amazing.
Yeah, it sounds like you do a lot of good work. So it's like something that's super serious, but what's like the smallest job you've ever taken on? Like something that's kind of like maybe a fun story that you have to share?
Yeah, fun story. I mean, I have a lot of fun stories, but I mean, they're all fun in their own way. I think like I find the fun because investigations can get really dark. And sometimes for me, it's like, they're usually not fun, just being very transparent. They're usually not fun, right? Like a lot of them are very dark, whether it's a murder case or whether you're helping, you know, a family law case that there's a divorce going on or cheaters, right? Like that's never really fun or there's no light out of that, but you have to find the light. And so I feel that that's kind of what I've done. And so it's really fun when I was doing fugitive recovery investigations because it's very, very, very like, your day is always different. There's always something crazy going on in front of you, or there's always, you know, and the way these criminal minds, like the way criminals think is very, very different. And so kind of understanding and like getting to be on a personal level with them, and understanding like why they've had to do that, it's very interesting. And so oftentimes people look at criminals as like, oh, they're bad people. No, I think everybody has a story. Right? And so getting to understand like why they think like that or why they're doing that is, you know, they have their own personal story and maybe understanding them on a whole different level. And I've been able to do that with whether it's, you know, I had to arrest criminals. At the end of the day, it was about respect, and they respected me and showed me the respect that, you know, because guess what? I was giving that to them. And, you know, no matter what, it was just talking to them like humans, right? Because oftentimes they're treated like really bad. But when somebody comes out and starts talking to them like normal and like showing them respect, and you know they're gonna show you respect and value, and I think that's what it comes down to.
It's not necessarily you're good or you're bad. It's sort of a spectrum, and sometimes it's even like it could be a person that's been good their whole lives just made a bad decision, but they had a good intention behind it, good motivation, right? Yeah, that's super interesting. What's your schooling background? It sounds like you understand the mind pretty well.
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's in criminal justice, and my master's is in business administration, and I do plan to go for my doctoral degree as well.
Wow. Yeah, you have some good credentials. All right, so moving from professional, what about community work? You're involved with community, right? What's some of the work that you're doing right now that excites you the most?
So probably being on the Stanislaus County Veterans Advisory Committee and Commission. I think that's the most exciting, especially because it's like transition point for my military service and like just exiting that, you know, and then transitioning into being on the board. It was like, whoa, like super awesome. And because I still have a lot of love for the military and I want to be able to help out in the shortfalls and like, you know, the issues that the military is facing right now. So I absolutely love it. And I feel like it was just really placed on my path for a reason, and I love what we're doing. I love where we're headed. I love the advocacy part of it because like I can still help out, you know, my brothers and sisters in uniform and even our veterans that are out of uniform, right? So that's probably my favorite part.
Even outside of the military, you still have that bond with them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you still have that love and care, and even though you have your own story, each service member, veteran, right? Closing a chapter, it just reopens where you can say, I still have the love, but guess what? I'm going to open up and figure out ways to make change, right? In the military, out of the service, and just finding ways to help, you know, your brothers and sisters.
Wow, that's amazing. So one of our last questions for your background. I have a saying that kind of goes, the greatest sin against humanity is to not strive to reach your full potential. What do you think is your purpose here on earth with that potential?
My purpose here on earth, I just feel like I've been through a lot in my life and I've gone through so many different challenges, but there was always good that came out of that challenge. And so I feel like God's really placed me here for a reason. And regardless of the struggles that I went through, I really am a true believer of like everything happens for a reason. And so I really wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for like those specific challenges that I faced, because the next chapter that God placed on like in my life, it was just mind blowing. Like, and I get really emotional and like sentimental, like, wow, like everything is literally, I had to go through that to see this, right?
But you don't understand it when it happens.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you're
crazy.
like, God, what are you doing? But then it happens and you're like, okay, I get you, God. Like, it's,
Yeah.
So,
You're like, what happened to me at 16 years old? I don't understand, but maybe God's going to use it when I'm 60.
amen.
You know what I mean?
Amen.
So, it's crazy how God works. I don't even try to understand. It's just His ways are higher than ours, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's get into your story. Let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us about your experience with bullying and when did it start?
Yeah, so I think I've really witnessed bullying even since I was a lot younger, right? Bullying, I've always seen, it's a thing, right? And so I was bullied actually when I was in elementary school. That's where I really first saw it. I was bullied by an individual, and I didn't understand why, right? And so as I grew up, I started understanding what bullying was and what it meant and why it's unhealthy and toxic and, just all those things. And as life went on, I learned how to stand up for myself, whether it's, a family member was bullying me or, somebody that I went to school with. And at first I felt like because I was the youngest child. I'm the youngest of three girls. And of course I was, my neighbors, all boys, they're always playing football and being rough, And so I feel like I was always bullied because I was the youngest child. And so as growing up, I started standing up for myself, and I was like, oh, I felt like a sense of like, oh, I'm in control, or, I feel good. Like, I can actually do this, right? So once I started doing that, I could tell, like, people were like, whoa, what happened to you, and it gave me, like, a sense of, like, I could do this. Like, it's okay to voice how you feel. Like, you don't always have to be, like, not, like, silent, So as life went on, obviously I went through my own bullying issues and, seeing that firsthand, being younger. But as I got to be an adult, I witnessed it firsthand as well. And being in the military, I was bullied, harassed, retaliated against. And so it was actually really eye-opening for me because all those times that I felt like I was so strong to, like, stand up for myself, I honestly felt so weak. I'm like, how am I, like, a female in the military? And then I feel like really weak because I feel like I couldn't stand up for myself. And I'll tell you why, because, as being bullied in the military, and then obviously there's retaliation, and retaliation's a real thing. And so as I started to witness that, it was really scary for me. So, I was bullied because I was standing up for not only myself, but my brothers and sisters and also, everybody else. And once I started seeing the behaviors and attitude changes towards me, I'm like, is there something wrong with me? Like, I started questioning, but I'm like, no, there's nothing wrong with me. You're just mad because X, Y, Z, right? Like, I'm actually standing up for myself and doing the right thing. Why am I being punished for doing the right thing? So I started to, like, question and ask, like, okay, why am I here? Like, what's this about, I never thought it was gonna be a real thing, like, in my adulthood, right? But then when I started seeing, like, how it was a real thing, like, in the service, I was like, oh, wow, like, this is really, like, what bullying is. And even though I'm a strong individual, it was hard for me because I couldn't really say too much without being prepared for, like, a retaliation against me, right? So that was the biggest challenge for me, like, standing up for myself and not being able to really do too much without being retaliated.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we think about bullying, we usually think about it being like a childhood issue. We usually think it's on the playground. A bigger kid pushes me down and I can't do anything about it because I'm small. I can't do anything. But this can happen even well into your adulthood, right? And it's all because bullying is a difference in the power dynamic. Well, one person isn't necessarily as strong as the other person. It doesn't have to be physical. It could be job-wise, whatever, supervisor to a lower position, anything like that. So it's really just an imbalance of power, and you can feel that well into your adulthood, where you start feeling like I have to act a different type of way in order for that person to stop messing with me, or for you just act differently than you would normally would. Sometimes you even dress differently, just so that they don't make fun of the way that you look sometimes, right? But with that being said, can you tell me if you're able to tell right at the beginning that, hey, this is kind of like a bullying issue, or is it just kind of like gradually over time where you're like, okay, yeah, no, this is bullying now?
So at first I didn't know really. I mean, like, I knew it was bullying, but I didn't really know it was, like, super, like, because there's so many other things behind the, the spectrum. I think, like, at first I knew it was bullying, but I didn't know how much it was affecting me and also the people around me. And so at first, I mean, I could say, like, yeah, okay, I knew it was bullying, but I didn't realize it was, like, really bad until I started going through the phases, right? And I'm like, oh wow, like, well, you're not going to bully me because of XYZ, right? But then it got so bad that I was like, okay, well, this is very toxic, right? Toxic environment. And so, yeah.
Were you like in denial for a moment where you're just like, this is kind of like a one-off thing, it's not going to happen again, and then you eventually got to like, okay, I know this is actually something else?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was in a toxic leadership, I was toxic chain of command, toxic leadership, toxic command climate. Like, it was all over, it was all around, right? Mm-hmm. And so once that first incident started, it started leading to like more incidents. But I'm a person, as you know, like a lot of investigators, we kind of like, take a lot of notes or take a lot of incidents and then present, right? Like, it's not like I'm going to act super quick.
Gather the information, analyze it, and then...
Yeah. So I'm really an analytical thinker, like most PIs, right? Like, we take the information at hand, we don't really execute right away, but then say, okay, this is how we're going to approach. So that's kind of what I was doing. I just started taking like different notes of like all the incidents that were occurring. And funny story, I was talking to a congressman today, and he brought that up about how, you take really good notes, because, I had shared these notes about all the stuff that I was facing in the military, and I literally, like, every incident that occurred, he was like, wow, you take great notes. And I, obviously told him for that reason, like, I took the opportunity to give them many chances. But after seeing like a trend of like, okay, this incident, and it wasn't even from the same person, it was like many other people that started to like gang up and bully him. Like, this is pretty toxic. But so when I filed my first complaint, that's when I started really seeing it like, oh wow, like this is like a bullying chain. It wasn't even just one specific person, it was like a whole group.
Now, did it turn into harassment after?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
Was there like a particular moment or event that kind of stands out to you in your memory about a bullying situation?
Absolutely. So one specific incident was I had an anxiety attack on post, actually, and there was one of my higher leaders decided that they were going to target me and just try to intimidate and bully and harass like as much as they could. Not understanding like all the pain and issues and things that I'm already going through, and instead decided that they were going to try to aggravate it and make it worse. And so they decided to like single me out and like pull me into a room and try to counsel me and try to get me in trouble and work with other people to like literally try to kick me out of the military, and just making up a lot of different lies and things like that. And it was really hurtful, and not just hurtful, it was really toxic, and it was really unfortunate because I realized like I wasn't the issue. It was like somebody that had their own issues going on at home and whatever else they were facing in their life, that they were just unhappy. And so they were trying to take it out on somebody that they saw that had the light. And I always feel like I've had that challenge, which is crazy that we're here, because as time goes on, I think about like, I feel like I've always had different challenges, like every place that I go, but I think it's because I carry so much light. Like, I love God. I always want to see the good in people, and people are just so dark and they have their own problems. And sometimes when you're unhappy, you tend to take it out on other people, especially when they're like look happy, or they're, they have that light. And so, yeah.
Hurt people, just like how the saying goes. It's crazy, especially when you're someone who's like kind of stands out. A lot of people will either hate you or love you, and there's really not any in between behind that. Even if they might like seem kind to you in your face, they might have some bad intentions for you, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so like when we're talking about bullying, you said that you experience an anxiety attack, right? That's kind of goes hand in hand with bullying. So the victim usually feels like anxious, or they get depressed or whatever. Did that anxiety ever transcend into a panic attack? And if it did, like what did that feel like for you?
So in that specific incident, it was like I was feeling like I was about to come down with a really big panic attack. I did go into a semi like mild panic attack, which is why I was, obviously transported off post, by the fire department, so it's made the ER. But it really it was really bad. I mean, at that moment, like when they took me over to the fire station to, have them help me, that was actually really eye-opening for me too, because like, even though I was going through a really hard time, and I'm like, wow, like I'm a strong person. This just happened. Like, what's going on, you know? The whole fire department was like sitting down like around me, and even like the officers from like the installation, like literally. So Camp Parks doesn't have like so many officers or so many police, fire department, officials, but it was crazy because, I was trying to say firefighters, sorry. They don't have so many firefighters. So when it comes to the installation, there's not very many. Mm-hmm. So the whole room was like filled with like tons of people. I'm like, why is there so many people here, And one thing that they said was, you've always been there for us, so now we're going to return the favor and be here for you. And that was actually eye-opening. It actually made me more emotional because I was mind blown about how, like, I never wanted to create any issues or anything, but what they understood was they saw how I was being treated, and they wanted to still show their respect and love in another way, and that was just, wow, it was crazy. But, seeing that firsthand, me going through it made me realize, like, you know what, you just have to get through this. Everything happens for a reason, and it is what it is. You can't change the issue right now. You can only make it better, or try to figure out how to get out of it, right? But it was challenging for a while. It's still, obviously, it still affects me in different ways, just realizing how people can do that to other people. But aside from that, it's just you live and you learn and move on.
Most definitely. That's actually a really good transition point to my next question. Your support group, was there any support during that time? Was there anyone that you can talk to about what you were going through?
Yeah, so I had a really great support, whether it was other, military service members that I served alongside. I confided in a lot of like firefighters and law enforcement individuals that, know like my story and what I was really going through, and that actually saw it firsthand. Mm-hmm. Aside from like a lot of my battle buddies, there was a lot of people that I was able to like talk to and like, but it was not a huge group. It was very, very, very small, tight-knit group that I could trust, that were there to support me through it, and that still support me through it. Because sometimes like people that are not in the military, they don't understand, but then people in the military, they do understand, because sometimes they might be facing it or see other people that are facing it, and civilian work compared to military is just so different. Mm-hmm. And so when people can like understand like what you're kind of going through and you're able to talk about it and stuff, it was nice to have that support from those people.
Most definitely. And when you see bullying happen to some people, sometimes they don't even have a support group. What do you think that you would have felt like if you didn't have anyone around you to confide in?
Yeah, I mean, like, when you don't have support, you're not talking to people. A lot of service members, as you know, they've, committed suicide, or, they live in, like, complete isolation and want to self-harm and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Praise the Lord that never crossed my mind, right? Like, but I think about those people because I've had service members that I've actually led that have tried to do that, right? And so it's unfortunate because you really are in a really closed space, and when you're not seeking that help, it can lead to more damaging issues. And I think that, thank God that I never got to that place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a super serious issue that's going on. It shouldn't be happening where our service members, our veterans, are actually committing suicide when they felt like they just have nowhere else to go, when there is resources and people out there that care about them enough to be able to help them through that tough time. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're weak when they reach out for help. It means that they're strong because they recognize there's an issue. They recognize that they can't do it alone, and that takes a lot of strength. Yeah. Especially when you're a man and you're not used to asking for help, right? So, was there ever a moment where you felt like the bullying was so much where you had to take some type of physical response to it, either like you had to like feel like you were gonna fight someone or something else?
Well, okay, so in the military, we obviously, people can resort to that. Mm-hmm. I've never been a person that is like aggressor. Like, I've never really been like that. Mm-hmm. So for me, especially being in the military, I'm, and not just the military, even in my civilian life, a lot of people know that I like to live like a straight and narrow. Like, I don't like to get in trouble. I don't like to bring too much attention, things like that, right? Mm-hmm. Life happens, things happen, but at the end of the day, I know that I've worked very hard to get where I'm at, and God's really placed me here, and I feel like I can't disappoint him, right? And so, I feel that, I'm so sorry. What was the question again?
Just you felt like you were so overwhelmed that you were wanting to take a more physical approach to resolving the issue.
Oh yeah. So no, like being in the military, obviously, like you have to understand too that, like, for me, I work very hard to where I have gotten, right? And so I don't want to make a bad decision that's going to affect me later on. And so for the military, I really never, in the back of your head, you're like, man, I wish I could do X, Y, Z, right? Like, but no, you're not going to, because it's going to affect you long term. And for me, I can't react like that. So did it cross my mind? Possibly, but like, I don't really would ever resort to that, because I just think that's not a solution. As much as other people may think so, I don't think like it would be beneficial for my career. It could be a career ender, if that, and that just give them more fuel to, be like, okay, we're gonna get her out. Okay, this isn't, So, no, it really never crossed my mind to actually want to harm somebody. I don't think that's
what
right.
I was gonna say. Being in the military, like what would happen if like there was altercations or people would fight? Like, is there like a strict like rule or regulation against that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, because the military is very, very, very unique, and once you're like in, you can understand, but it depends. Like, are you there's so many different things that play into that, right? Are you an officer? Are you really well connected, or are you like the soldier that has no friends, that have no connections? And so different things like play out in every incident, because you may not get kicked out for fighting if you're friends with like your XO, or you're friends with like your commander, right? And they're really cool with you, and they didn't like the person that you just beat up, right? They'll cover that up super quick. But it could be like somebody that's super connected, right? That there may be a commander that doesn't like that individual, and guess what? Find the first opportunity to kick them out of the military, start a 15-6, and which is an investigation through the military, and then possibly get them chaptered out of the military, right? And so there's so many different dynamics. So it really depends. I mean, it's really about the connections, and then also like, does people like you or they don't like you, right? Are they ready to get you out or find a way to get you out? And is it right? No, but at the end of the day, it does happen.
Most definitely. So then, did that issue ever get resolved, or is it still like an ongoing thing where you're trying to get a closure to it?
Absolutely. So it's ongoing. I still have a lot of things in the background, and I actually filed my federal lawsuit in federal court because I think making a statement and like really coming out and vocalizing like all the problems I went through, just to give me that closure, because I feel like closure looks different for everybody, but justice also looks different for everybody. What does that justice look like for you, right? So for me, I don't want to see my brothers and sisters or veterans going through what they're going through right now, and that's why I've decided to, whatever I have to do to make a difference, to help and not allow people to go through what I went through, because it was like living in a nightmare. And I feel like if I can help them out in any way and do what I need to do, that's what I feel like I'm gonna do.
If you can go back in time to that era, what would you do to resolve the issue differently? Or if you were able to go back and talk to your past self and kind of give yourself advice, what would you say?
Yeah, so I feel like I wish I would have pushed more with Congress, at an earlier phase, and, me going through this. I just feel like I was going through my own stuff that I really didn't have the energy, nor did I was really going through it. It was really hard for me. So, but if I could go back and actually had more energy, because even though I was going through this and I was still in the military, I was going to DC to advocate, right? But I wasn't going as often as I wanted to. But if I could rewind, I'd probably like do more advocacy like early on. But it's never too late, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah, it's just like that saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is now.
Yeah.
It's sort of like that, right? Okay, that's an incredibly interesting story. Gabby, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and transition over to impact of your story of bullying. So the bullying you experience, how has that affected you in your work and your social life? Can you tell us a little bit?
Yeah, so the bullying that I've been, gone through the military, it's really impacted me. I've isolated myself. I, tend to sometimes not want to be around people. It's not more of that I don't love or care about people. It's more of that, like, I have these my own emotions and like things I'm dealing with internally because I'm still on a healing journey. So it's really affected me because sometimes I just want to have a day that I'm not around anybody and I'm in my room or like in my office or just focusing on other things. And I definitely didn't see it too much while it was like happening, right? But now that I'm out of it, I'm like, oh wow, like and then it also has affected me, like, you know, my parenting. Like sometimes I shut down and I have to like explain to my children, hey, like I'm really sorry, it's not you, but like I'm going through XYZ, and I, you know, just please respect that. I'm gonna maybe shut down for an hour or 2 hours or maybe 3 or 4 on a weekend or whatever. And so it's affected me in all areas of my life because I really wasn't like that before. Like I love to be around people and I love to be like socializing and like that's just who I am. But I've really noticed a huge turn on that I really it's really affected me to like want to be around to me. And not always. It's like sometimes, not always. It's like because through my healing journey now that I see it, I'm starting to get a lot better and get more out there, which is actually helping my healing journey. Because I had been shutting down or I had been trying to isolate myself, but now being around more people, I'm like, oh, like this isn't too bad, and you know, I'm starting to work through a lot more. So
I admire that. I admire that you just said that, you know, you talk to your girls and you let them know what you're going through, because a lot of people don't do that, right? Oftentimes there's people that are just hurt or isolated and they're just like, leave me alone, just don't talk to me, right? So I understand that. And that's admirable that you get to, you know, you open up and you have that open communication with your girls, so that's great. And I'm sure that later on down the road, they're gonna really thank you for that. Yeah, I'm sure. So then we're gonna move on to the next question. In what ways do you think bullying affects not just individuals, but communities? So there's 3 parts to this question. We'll start with this one. How does it affect communities? How do you think it affects, let's say, communities and social environments?
I think it creates division, you know, through communities, and creates division through communities, and you know, basically like we're allowing like our children or us or you know creating a standard, right? Division is obviously what we don't want to see. So when you see people do it and you're like, okay, well, why are you doing this, right? Like, and then you try to get down to the bottom of it definitely creates division, and it creates, you know, people to feel a certain way, and it's very hurtful to, whether it's a child or an adult, right? And so, but guess what? It happens all day in front of us. Like, whether it's, you know, somebody that's high in power or somebody that's super homeless, right? Like, every walk of life, there's bullying going on, you know, and it's like, how do we fix that? You know, it's always a question in my head, like, when I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect, but it's like when you walk through life and you're like, how do you feel, because sometimes people say, oh, it makes me feel good when I bully other people, right? It's like, well, it's kind of toxic and it's very hurtful. Like, how do we combat that, right? So
it's I believe it's awareness that needs to be brought up, because a lot of times people just think, like I've been saying, it black and white, right? Where it's like, this guy's a bully and he's a bad person. Well, did you know John used to get his, how can I say this nicely? He used to get beat every day by his dad, and now he has all this anger pent up. So it's like, it's not just a bully, this is someone that has been hurt, that has no outlet. And if we're able to understand it, it's like, now instead of just being like, okay, now you gotta fight him back, no, show compassion to that person. And if we can bring awareness to that there's more to the person than just kind of meets the eye, we're able to kind of address and solve that issue, at least on a smaller scale, and hopefully that will, you know, progress into the community and then nationwide and, you know, worldwide.
Yeah,
hopefully.
not just that, but maybe it's something that, like, if that boy was getting beat, that's the only thing he learned to do, right? Yeah. So oftentimes they just do what they learned, right? So they think it's okay.
Yeah,
so actually, there's so many factors.
Totally. Yeah, I actually have an issue that had happened not too long ago. And a child was being bullied, right, by another child at school. And as I was talking to the mom about it, I saw one of the children was bullying the other one. Well, that other child decided to be the bigger person, and look how beautiful this is. The other child decided to be the bigger person and basically forgive that child. And then also, even though that child was still kind of bullying, realize that they were very hurt and would FaceTime the child and say, you know what, I just want to let you know I still love you. Wow. And hey, I still want to be your friend, or is it okay if we are friends? And I I actually reached out to the mom and said, I am so like in awe with your child. Like, it's so amazing how like children can still see the light and understand that. And I'm sorry, but that is huge for that child to really recognize that, because you don't see that very often. But imagine like the whole world like that.
Yeah.
Like it actually like challenged me to be like, okay, you need to step up your game just a tad, right?
Yeah, if a child can recognize that, then what's going on in our lives that we are so blind to that?
Yeah.
You know?
So moving on to transformation and healing. So I know you touched on this a little bit. So everyone heals differently. What was the turning point for you?
Ooh, so my turning point has really been like, obviously getting out of the military. And as much as I didn't want to do it, and I wanted to go on to be a warrant officer because I was, offered to go to officer school, I really had to be real with myself and recognize, that I wasn't okay. And if I stayed in service, it was probably going to aggravate or like re-traumatize me in so many different ways. And so it was really just being real with myself and recognizing like there's so much more to life, and like I don't have to be like tolerating this kind of toxic environment. Like I don't have to stay it, right? Like if I stayed in that toxic, it would just get worse and worse over time, and like, maybe lead to other things, or who knows, right? And so I didn't want it to get there, but as transitioning out of service, I feel like this has really gave me like a way to start healing. And myself and many people that have supported me through this journey agree with that, right? It's been a really a good pivot point for me, and just everything, like I said, happens for a reason, and it's my pivot point. And then now with me joining the San Jose County Veterans Advisory Commission, it's just so awesome that I can like seriously do so many other things with like service members and veterans, and like still pretend like I'm in the military, right? Like, but I'm really not. I'm a veteran, 100% disabled veteran. I have my own issues that I've endured, and like just this new chapter, I'm like really excited because I actually see like a complete different Kelley from when I left service to now. Like I've dropped 16 pounds. Like I've been able to.
You off for quick.
No. All right, Kelley. So did forgiveness play a role?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How did you forgive? Are you still in that process of forgiveness?
Yeah and no. I think forgiveness was about myself, like forgiving them to be good with myself, and just understanding like you can't change it, but you can only, make yourself better, or, do what you have to for yourself. So forgiveness for a lot of different things that played out during this, different phases have really played a significant impact on like my healing, because I think forgiving is about, for my healing process and to make that better. So.
Sounds good. Good. All right. So Derek, advice for listeners.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to someone who's currently experiencing bullying, whether they be a child or an adult?
Yeah, so I think definitely taking the, situation, obviously analyzing the situation and seeing like what's actually going on and how you can make it better. Whether it's maybe self-reflecting on something you're doing that's like leading somebody else to bully you, or vice versa, right? Like if you're bullying somebody, okay, why are you doing this, and why is it making you feel better? Is there a shortfall, or is there, weakness that you might have to, to do these things? And so really taking self-ownership of like whether you're the bully, the aggressor, or whatever, or you're being bullied, and figuring out how this can be different and make changes, right? And then seeing how you can execute that. Whether it's, taking a stand and saying, I don't want to deal with this anymore, and, go to leadership or going to the school leadership. And sometimes you may have to go further, right? Whether it's, going to the district and, even higher, right, at the state level.
Yeah.
So it's really making a change and impacting, because sometimes people think by saying something,
people are going to look at you different, or you're going to be a target for retaliation. And it's a real thing. That's why people oftentimes they get scared about standing up. But I think it's the right thing to do, because you're standing up for what you're setting a standard and you're setting a boundary and saying, I'm no longer going to tolerate this kind of behavior, and I want to make a change because I don't want my classmate being bullied by this person, or I don't want to feel a certain way. So I think standing up for yourself and other people is always important. And at the end of the day, I think it's good for people to do that.
I like how you say that if this person isn't going to solve it, take it to the next person, because a lot of times we see that, oh no, I did tell someone, I told the teacher and the teacher didn't do anything about it, or I told my supervisor, the supervisor didn't do anything about it. Well, then take it to the person above that, take it to someone else who has more power, or just keep voicing it, but don't just stay silent and be compliant, right?
Yeah, so I actually witnessed that a lot through my investigation business. We have a lot of different cases that we deal with, including like for school districts, and we oftentimes see like shortfalls in investigations. So like families and like, the community hires us to come in and like investigate, and we actually have a story about a child that was being bullied not too long ago, and I obviously can't say the location or whatnot just for confidentiality reasons, but we had a child that was being bullied by somebody at school, and they kept being bullied over this last year, even last year, and then ongoing to this year. And I was involved in the case last year, and we are back on it again. And again, like, nothing was really done for that child. And fast forward to now, last week, he was punched in the face.
Wow.
And what steps did the leadership do? They didn't do anything. They said they were going to suspend the individual. The individual was never suspended, and it led to like a child having to defend himself because this kid was punching him in the face and stuff like that. And so accountability really needs to happen. And I think it's important to take a stand, and you're even showing that child like it's okay to take it to that next level, and it's okay to do that, because when people don't hold people accountable, that's why this world has so many issues, because we're not holding people accountable and setting standards and setting boundaries of what really needs to happen, and that's why it's very chaotic right now.
Yeah, most definitely. What would you say to, I guess the bully in that situation, to encourage them to change or take a look at themselves to change?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What would you say to the bully to basically change them? What advice would you give?
Yeah, I don't think you can really change anybody. I think it's really they have to be ready for change. Oftentimes I think whether it's, the bully, the aggressor, or the person that's being bullied, I think you have to, like, on being bullied side, it's like you have to want to stand up for yourself. And then from the bully's perspective, it's like they're not going to change until they're ready, or maybe healed, or, take some reflection on like why
they might not even recognize they're an issue.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think, just maybe having a conversation and saying like, hey, is everything okay? And just kind of like tone it down, and not, because a lot of kids, like in schools, what we realize is like, he's a bully, don't go talk to him. Like, they're super standoffish and scared, and I don't want to talk to him, or nobody wants to be his friend now, and then he feels isolated, right? But I think maybe like actually being the bigger person and maybe going up to that person without feeling like your life's in danger, right? But just finding a common like topic of conversation that you guys can maybe relate.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe that individual has so much other things going on, right? Maybe they lost a family member, maybe they've been being severely beaten or something, like you mentioned earlier. And so really understanding like their story and like relating, and I think like it can actually take you guys so much further, and then maybe even turning that bully from being a bully to like a good human, right? Like, and sometimes it's really just being a bigger person in that place.
Most definitely. So we talked about the bully and what possibly they can do about it. It's not really much, but what can friends, families, or even coworkers do to someone to support someone who is being bullied?
Yeah, I think just really being there for that person, whether it's a good ear, whether it's being understanding or forgiving or loving, and just understanding what each individual need is, because everybody that's being bullied is different, whether they are result to like drug usage, or if they, want to party, or if they go, maybe having that conversation and saying, hey, like, I see that you're going through so much, what can I do for you? And just being understanding that people go through different like healing processes, and like everything's different, but knowing that people have their own story, and whatever they result to, like, it's just a phase that they're probably going through, and like they have to understand like this is not who they are, this is just the stuff they've had to go through, and really just having that support around them is better than anything.
Most definitely. What about what do you think schools or workplaces, organizations can do to better address bullying and prevent it from happening?
Accountability. I definitely think accountability is the biggest thing. I think, oftentimes people try to sweep it on a rug, or hey, it's okay, and like, we took care of the issue, and oftentimes I see it, it's like 99% of the time that it's not handled appropriately. And so really taking accountability and actually providing some type of action or game plan about how to make change within their organization or school, right? Like, we see this happen all the time in different types of cases that, because accountability wasn't taking place, this has led to, whether it's more sexual assault cases, more bullying cases, or whatnot. We see that happening because no accountability was taken. So I think accountability is the biggest part.
Yeah, there's even like events or programs that happen in school. Like I know Gabby and I have spoken about it before. I don't know if you've heard about it, but Challenge Day is a good program. It's a program or an event? It's an event that goes on.
It's an event that goes on in the schools, and they talk about different scenarios and stuff, and they make the kids get in a line, so they start asking questions, and they're like, move 2 steps forward if this has happened to you, if you thought about suicide. So once kids see the other friends moving, stepping up, like 2 steps up, they're like, I never knew you thought about committing suicide, so they start kind of like recognizing and start thinking about, what others are really going through. So it's a really good event that they hold in the middle school here in Patterson and the high school. I've been a volunteer twice, once, and it's just amazing to watch how it unravels, and at the end how everyone's crying because they start getting into their emotions, and start thinking about the things in their life, experiences that they've went through. So definitely as adults, we tend to harbor a lot inside of us, and then it's always a good idea to just talk about things and continue to talk about it, and bring light to the issues, because there's so much bullying going on in workplaces also. I've went through it, so it's just that exposure, right?
It's definitely exposure, because I was actually in high school when they had a Challenge Day happen, and there was such a shift in the dynamic between all the students.
Right.
I didn't go to it because I think you either sign up or you get invited. I forget how it goes, but I didn't sign up for whatever reason. I was a little dumb little kid. But when that happened, I remember all the students that had went, when they came back, they were much more loving to each other, and I saw a lot of like bullying and things happen in the class from like, most of the time it's like the cliques and the status of some students. Oh, this is the popular students, these are the nerdy kids. And I saw the dynamic between the popular kids and the nerdy kids just kind of like come together, and like they were like so loving to each other. I'm like, what happened? Like, what did you guys do? Right? So
That's awesome.
It definitely works. It most definitely works.
I love that.
I wish there was more programs like that, and throughout like the whole school year, right? And throughout like just bring it forward to more than just like one class or 2 classes. Like, how about the whole school? So there's definitely a lot of work to be done, and we commend you for bringing a lot to the light, and you continue on this journey of fight, because you're definitely fighting for the greater good. I know we didn't get to hear a whole lot of like the different experiences that you've experienced, so we invite you to come back.
That'll be a part 2.
Part 2. So you can really share more than what other stories, other things things that have happened to you. I know you mentioned sexual abuse or assault. Sorry, sexual assault. So we would, want to hear about that. So definitely, we'll invite you for part 2.
Absolutely.
And we would love to just, as we wrap up, just thank you so much for sharing and making time to share your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course,
I really appreciate it.
We're extremely grateful that you came and you shared with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Alrighty.